Okay, so let's start our collab review for the REST API patches. I am sharing my screen. You're seeing, right? Uh, so basically, what I thought to do was go through the patches, give you an overview. The patches are very similar. What changes from one to another is basically the methods that were implemented. So I believe an overview is enough to give you an idea of what to review and what you need to pay more attention in the code. Basically, we have four patches related to these changes. The first one, I believe we already discussed it in the past. The first one is this, is the implementation of the client itself. It does not have lots of functions migrated, but it has the main code for the REST API client, right? So I forgot, let me share the link with you. I will share the Zoom chat. If you want to write something, I don't know. But basically, what we have this here in the first patch is the implementation of the client, the REST API client. It will work from ONTAP 9.11.1 if the configuration for the legacy client is set to false. Basically, it means that the default is using ZAPI for now, but if we want to use REST, we just need to set this flag on Manila conf to false. This is how it works today. One important thing to say is that previously we had share server migration on that worked with ONTAP 9.10. This still works because the code was not removed. The code is still in client cmode.py. We kept this way to avoid problems in backports we might do in the future. So the functions related to share server migration were re-implemented on client cmode REST, but it still works as it worked in the past. So if you see in here in the code, we didn't remove anything here from the client cmode.py, and I will show later, but it still works in the JHS true patch. We just copied the functions to the REST client. Let me see if there's anything else I need to say here. I will try to show a little bit about the code now. So the first patch, we have the client cmode REST. Here we added the client implementation. This patch was already revealed in the last release during the last cycle, but we didn't make the fixes yet, but we need to review these comments and provide the fixes for this patch. But what we have here is the client cmode REST. Here we implement the functions related to that will communicate with ONTAP. We have the REST API. We separated from, we decided to keep it separate from the API.py, where is the ZAPI implementation. We tried to avoid making changes on other files that were not related to the client, but in some cases it was necessary. So you may find a few changes in data motion, libase. This one, for example, This is what we added regarding to the way it selects the client. So if the flag is disabled, it will select if the flag is false, it will select the REST client. If it's true, it will select the ZAPI client. And all the calls will be made using this client that will be used by the Manila driver. I think that is the most. This is the major changes here. We also have the unit tests, but I don't think if we have much to talk about this patch because it was already reviewed in the past. Do you have any question about this specific patch or anything I have talked to until now?
So the behavior from, I mean, this is going to be the first patch in the series, and the behavior here is that if you you have to enable it explicitly. Otherwise, we're going to continue to use this ONTAP ZAPI client that's already there in code.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are, yeah, of course, definitely address those comments that are there then. And the other thing, I think, are a couple of failures. You're seeing there is some pilot failure. I suppose you, or some point, I don't know whether that's genuine. Maybe you're missing like some pilot decorators. uh, if you want them to be ignored in the pilot job, but some look genuine. So I was wondering if your CI is actually running against this change.
Yes, the CI, we run the CI in the latest patch, the CI downstream regarding the REST. This is here. The latest patch contains everything, basically. This is what
Okay.
we have executed downstream.
So that's patch 4, the DHSS true functions,
Yeah,
8711105. Okay.
yeah.
And are you so these links are on the CETA but they're not on the review, right?
Right.
They
They,
could
they
be.
are not in the
Okay.
review yet. I can add them onto the review.
Yes, please. That would be helpful.
Yeah. We basically have two jobs, one for GHSS Pulse, GHSS Pulse and GHSS True, both passed here. We have here the logs, the unit tests, and we can see in the controller logs, Manila conf, right? The legacy flag here is set to false. So it's
Okay.
using REST. Any more questions? No.
No. So this code seems familiar, at least to me, and to Carlos, I think, because we've reviewed it at the end of last cycle mostly.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I would be, recommending doing is definitely fix up those test failures and check for coverage, unit test coverage, because a lot of code is being added. I'm wondering if you had a drop, which is kind of what the coverage job is failing for. But it's also very sensitive. So if you think it's okay and you've finished most of the all of the if conditionals and stuff like that, we're fine. We don't really need every single line covered.
Yeah, I believe most of the code has coverage because we basically replicated what the ZAPI was testing in the unit tests and everything. So most of the code is covered, but I think it's good to check the coverage and see what else we can add to the tests. It's good. Maybe on the if we don't have time, maybe until the feature freeze, we can certainly do a follow-up patch.
Yeah, for the tests alone. Yeah, that makes
Test alone.
sense.
Yeah.
I had one other question. So the behavior of this config option, is it the same as your driver does in Cinder?
Yes, it's the same as in Cinder.
Okay, and the name of this config option, etc., is that the same as well?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, this is just for distributors like my company, for instance. We definitely prefer to have that consistency because of the documentation and other things as well. So good to see that. Thanks.
Yes, true. And we tried to keep the Cinder and Manila most similar.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's it. Anything else, or I can go ahead in the other patches?
No, go for it. So I'm assuming we'll follow up on this so we can. Are you planning? I mean, yeah, finish this, I guess, because I was going to ask you if you're planning another session to follow up on the reviews themselves. So if it could be a call later in the week, for instance, because this has no client impact, we actually have until Friday to get everything merged. So if you're going to have such a call, I would expect to probably do a code review and get this in because this has got enough eyes and you would have fixed up all those issues by then.
Yep. We can do an extra session if you want.
Yeah,
It's okay
let's
for
talk
us.
about it later. Yep, thanks.
Yep. Okay. So regarding the other patches, as I have said, they are really similar. So I will try to explain the first one and what are the main changes in each one. But the structure is really similar in all of them. In general, uh, what you will see is like a big change in client C mode REST, like many lines of code are added in client C mode REST. And sometimes you will see some, like a few lines of code in the client C mode that was used with ZAPI, and a lot of changes for unit tests. So that's the basic structure for all the other patches in the stack. So the changes are basically mapping the parameters from ZAPI to REST. So I can open my code. I think it will be easier to see. Like this one. For example, I took a really small function here just to show an example. In the left, we have the client C mode REST, and the right, the client C mode that uses API. So basically what we have here is we have a function with what we need to do during the migration. We keep the signature of the function, so it's the same parameters. And basically what we did is to map the function, the parameter that was used in ZAPI to the one that is used in REST. In the right, I have the example, the send request to ZAPI with the args, and in the left, I have for ZAPI. It changed a bit the structure. Like here, we have the URL and the method and the body. Sometimes we have the query in the case it's a patch or a get operation. One important thing here, and you may see this in the code, are the error codes. The error codes are different in REST API from the codes in ZAPI. So, for example, the exception is the same. We are using the same exception, but the error code is different. Like this, if we have, for example, a duplicate entry here in ZAPI, it will return this 13130 code. But in REST, it's returning number one, a literal one. So this error code is here. There's a list of these codes in the REST API.py file. and the ZAPI errors were in the API.py file. So basically, we tried to replicate the codes, but in the REST API file. And not all the codes are mapped, like, how can I say, one-to-one, but we tried to map as much closer as possible to the codes that previously were used in ZAPI. And that's it. All the functions are really similar. So if I open the code here, what you see, it's a list of functions that were mapped from ZAPI to REST. We tried to map all the parameters. Sometimes we used a few auxiliary functions like this one, just to make things easier. One important difference between ZAPI and REST is also that ZAPI in general uses the name of the objects, like SVM names or cluster name to make the requests. And REST in general uses the UIDs to make the operation. So this function, for instance, is used to get the volume information, and we use this in many places to retrieve the UID, like this one. You will see a lot of code like this, getting the UID because it's receiving the name as a parameter. We decided not to add the UID in the functions, just to avoid changes in the driver layer, because it would change a lot of things. So we decided to keep the name, but retrieve the UID here inside the client mode. That's it for the first patch. So we have 3 patches basically with the features. The first one, we tried to implement all functions related to, not all functions, sorry, the basic functions for DHSS false operations. So we have like driver initialization, periodic tasks, share, create, delete, manage and manage, change, shrink, access allow, snapshot. This is contained in the first patch. The second patch. The third one will contain only data motion related functions, but also for DHSS false. So we migrated in this patch like share migration, share replication, and create share from snapshot. As you can see, the structure is basically the same. A lot of changes in the client mode REST, a lot of changes in the unit tests, and a few changes, very specific in client mode, in data motion or libbase. For instance, this was an example. In this case, we decided to add the status returned here because ZAPI was returning the status quiesced and REST returns the status paused. So we preferred to add the status here and make a little change on data motion. This is the kind of change you may find in the files outside client mode REST. Libbase, Libbase also has a small change here. It's very similar. ZAPI returned the status completed, and we decided to add the success here because it's the status returned by REST. It's a small change. It will not bring any problems if we need to backport this. But we thought that it would be the better solution to add this kind of change here. But that's it. The structure is basically the same as the other patch. The last one, have all the functions related to DHSS true. So they have they have a lot of functions in common here. So basically what we have in the latest patch is all the functions that are specific to DHSS true. So like, for example, create share for snapshot is also possible to be done in DHSS false, right? It's in the data motion patch. But there are some methods that are specific to DHSS true operations. So we added here, and similarly to the other stuff. One thing I should mention here is related to shared server migration. As I said in the beginning, shared server migration was already present in the previous releases, but it was implemented inside client C mode. So basically what we added here, let me open, we copied the functions related to SVM migrate. So if I search here, SVM migration start, for example, SVM migration start, for example, is implemented now using the REST API. So we are using send request, URL, post, and the parameters that are needed here. Previously, it was implemented in client C mode, and it's still it is still implemented in client C mode. Let me open here. I try to show SVM migrate. Right. The functions are still here, so we didn't remove the functions related to SVM migration. It's not beautiful, but we decided to do that because we didn't want to break the code that was implemented previously. So if the user is with the flag enabled to use REST, the user set the flag to use REST, it will not use these functions in ZAPI. It will try to use REST. But if the flag is set to true, legacy true, it will use the ZAPI for SVM migration, and it will work in ONTAP 9.10 as it worked before. I don't know if this is clear. Maybe you may have some questions, but
sorry, just going to interject to ask. So these methods are really duplicated in this file right now, but it's going to go away at some point. Is this thing, right? Like that's why you've not tried to make any changes to the existing methods, or did I get that wrong?
Yes, that's right. In the future, we intend to deprecate ZAPI and remove the code in a future release. I still don't know when, but that's the plan, to remove ZAPI so the code will not be duplicated in future releases.
Okay. So I would suggest adding like, some doc comments or something like that, because yes, it is confusing to see the same code in two places. And you know why, but I don't know. I mean, one way of avoiding that could probably be using some sort of a mix-in and just separating that code. Did you try that? Or is that not sufficient for this?
Sorry, I didn't get the idea. Can you?
So I mean, right now, all of those methods are duplicated, right? That's what I understand.
Yes, they are not exactly duplicated,
Okay.
but they are, how can I say, adapted from from the code before. The problem was that SVM migrate even was implemented in client C mode, but it already was using REST. Yes. So we kept the code in the client C mode, and we added new code using REST also in the client C mode REST. It's not completely duplicated. It's refactor it for the pattern we define it now in the client mode REST. But
Okay.
okay, right?
Um, yes or no. Like, I was just wondering if there was a way, if yeah, but yeah, I see what you mean by,
Yep.
you probably, yeah, thanks. Let's focus on one of those. I can just read it for a second. Okay.
Just have one or two examples here.
Mm-hmm.
So previously it had meters here, right? We just changed it a little bit.
Yeah, all that stuff needs to change. Okay, so there is really not a great way to abstract that away. Okay. Uh, all right. No, and I don't think I need to be convinced. It's just definitely you guys as driver maintainers that need to take the burden of this. So what I would suggest, I think, is at least adding some talk comments or something like that, explaining why it is duplicated. And you don't need to do this in the rest part, the new code. I meant go back to the old code and say, uh, this is really rest, and it is here for a reason. And if you're using it has no, it is not going to be invoked if you're setting that config option to true, to false, right? Use legacy client to false. That's really what's happening, right? Like those
Yep.
things are getting invoked only when using the legacy client.
Yep.
Although they're hitting the REST API endpoint, but they're not really, they're still going to be considered for the driver purposes as a legacy code, legacy client interface.
Oh, sorry, my connection dropped.
Okay.
Oh, I think my screen stopped sharing. But
Okay. But you heard me, or did you want me to repeat?
yeah, I heard that you were talking about document this, right? Uh,
Not the new code, the old interfaces, I think, because you're
oh,
going to get rid of it someday. So I would prefer to put some sort of a pointer out there to somebody that's reading this code that it's intentional,
oh, okay,
that this code exists like this in two places, and it's
okay,
not being invoked when you set the config option to true, to false, sorry.
yeah, I got it. So do we mean? I believe here may be a good
Yeah,
place
some
to
such thing like that. Yeah, exactly.
add a note
Thanks.
and say, okay,
Yep,
I got it. It's a
that'd
good
be
idea.
perfect. But thanks for showing me that, it can't be the same. Although I did have a similar concern for the REST calls. Each of those REST calls is going to do a volume get before it does any operations on the volume, right? So it's essentially adding another round trip. There was no way to avoid that.
Unfortunately, not without changing uh, the the driver layer that's calling the functions.
Hmm.
So because if we want to, we try to avoid this in some cases. For example, in batch operations, we can just add a query. This is not a good example, but sometimes we can add a query here and the body together, and we can avoid calling send request 2 times, basically. But in many cases, we were not able to do that because we needed the UID, and the only way to change that would be changing the function signature and change the layer that's calling the function. You know, uh, but you are right. It's an extra call that previously didn't exist.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know what could be wrong with that in the sense of, I mean, it's going to be a little slower, but I don't think it's unbelievably slower or something just because you're making a query. I don't know. Depends probably on what that query looks like. It feels like a glob search on all the
Yes.
on all the volumes with that particular name and stuff. So I don't know how good that query is on a busy cluster, sort of a thing. But if at all you need to optimize, I think you can think of it as a later addition.
Yeah, one thing we tried to keep is that in ZAPI the default was returning when we did a query, ZAPI returned all the fields, and REST has a different behavior. REST return only the fields we specify, unless we specify like return all the fields. So we tried to always make these calls only with the fields we really need to retrieve to avoid the
Yeah. Yeah, that
slowness.
actually optimizes quite a bit. Actually, ZAPI has that behavior too. I remember some part of the code actually uses that. Like, it specifies exactly what it needs.
Yeah,
And that helps in some situations because the storage is probably looking at different places to get you that information, and it can just avoid doing that if you don't care about it. Yeah. Okay. I mean, this is just out of my curiosity. And if it happens to be a problem, you'll end up optimizing it some way later on.
yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Great,
Go ahead.
great. I think that's all for my part. I don't know if I need to if you want me to pass through a specific part of the code, but the general structure is this for all these patches. They're really big, but the changes are similar. I think I have passed through the topics here. Oh, just to let you know, there is at least one known issue. We have a few methods. I believe there are two methods. Start CG snapshots, commit CG snapshots that were related to consistency groups. They were not migrated yet because it depends on changing the architecture a little bit. This happened because ONTAP has changed the way it implements consistency groups. So we decided not to add this change right now and provide a patch later only with this change. Uh,
So what is the behavior right now? So if you have to take a snapshot of a group?
it still works with ZAPI. It will call the ZAPI functions for start CG snapshot and commit CG snapshot. The problem is that there is no equivalent in REST API for this specific ZAPI call. There are other
Okay.
ways to implement consistency groups, but not specifically calling, oh, sorry, calling this function, you know? So
Okay. So
that's why we decided to do it later.
so what this means that theoretically there, I mean, even with the REST API, there is going to be some ZAPIs that'll be invoked. Is
Yes.
this the only code path for that, or are there any other ZAPIs as well being used like this?
If I remember correctly, these are the only ones that
Oh,
are in ZAPI yet.
that's actually good news. I didn't think it was completely possible to replace everything, but that's pretty cool that you've gotten so close. Okay,
Yeah.
so is there I mean, I don't know ONTAP that well, but is there a possibility that somebody would have turned off ZAPI?
Sorry, do you
Uh,
mean the version on tap will not have ZAPI? Yeah.
that is one thing, and or another being, I suppose when you're setting up users and things like that, you have a way to control who has access to ZAPI, for instance, versus REST API, or what ports are open. Maybe the REST API is serving on a different port, and stuff like that. So at that point, is there a way that you may not have access to these ZAPIs?
Uh, yes, I believe on tap side, if I understood what you mean, on tap I can set the permissions for users, like say that the user has access to on tap PI,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
This is
exactly. That would be the ZAPI one.
this will be the ZAPI for REST. If I not wrong, I need to enable HTTP access and non-tap. So if it's not enabled, that REST API will not work.
So ideally, I think we should probably call this out at least in like the documentation or the release note or something, saying even if you do use this, which is set use legacy client to false, and you want the driver to use only the REST API, there are going to be a few ZAPIs that the driver will need access to. So you cannot remove on TAPI permissions, for instance, or something like that. Like the client user that you're using needs to still have access to the old on TAPI.
Yep, we have like kind of internal documentation for NetApp. We have a documentation for SCVM, scope account, for example. Maybe we can add there and make it explicit that the user needs to have this kind of permissions and this stuff.
Yeah, makes sense. And if even in your release note, like like as there is a known issues section that you could add that says that even if you do use the REST API, do force the driver to do REST API, it'll still do ZAPI for certain calls or something like that. And if somebody, let's say, theoretically doesn't care about those features, then they don't need to worry about that. But if somebody was to give your REST API driver a chance, they wouldn't at least run into this issue.
Yep.
If they know that it's a thing. And I see another thing in, let's say, I think this is 871105, which is the last patch. I see that you're sending a REST request and there's a to do with it to get net options.
Here, the latest patch.
Yeah, the last patch in client cmod rest.py. I think what 3162.
3.1. No, I believe anyone. You
Are you
think
on
you start
client
get
cmod rest?
net options?
Hold on, am I in the right file? Yeah, I am in the right file. So it's client cmod
Oh,
rest.py.
3162, right?
Yes, get net options. You're there.
Okay. Oh, yes. We were confirming this with NetApp. Basically, this is like a temporary solution. NetApp implemented this to stimulate the ONTAP CLI behavior. Basically, everything we can do on ONTAP CLI, we can do using this endpoint. So it was like a transition feature to make any call here, while it was not implemented in the correct endpoint.
And is that available to even the like unprivileged vServer scoped users and stuff? Or this doesn't matter to them because this is a DHSS true function?
I have not tested. I really don't remember, but I believe it works with scoped account too. I believe it works. But specifically related to this GetNet options, Felipe already talked to NetApp. Probably we will change this because what they said is basically that there is no endpoint to retrieve this information related to IPv6 because by default ONTAP enables IPv6 once you set the configuration. So it's like return true always. Maybe we will change this specific function here. It's a good point. I was not remembering this. But if I'm not wrong, there's other case. For example, this one here. This is
you're
also
doing
using
right.
private private client. And we will keep this as is because this is one case it only works with this endpoint. And we asked it to NetApp if there was other way to do that, and they said no, maybe in a future ONTAP release. So while we don't have the correct endpoint, we are using this private client endpoint.
I see.
Anything
Okay,
else?
pretty cool.
Okay.
No, I mean, the follow-up for that would be, I would hope you're testing this with, scoped accounts then.
Sure.
I mean, that would be something that could come even as a follow-up, but I mean, knowing that users have had issues with that in the past, because it's possible that when they upgrade, they're going to try to use the REST client. Maybe not, but maybe if they do, they might hit this and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will check this for scope account.
Yeah. Awesome.
Great. Anything else?
I do see one other issue. Sorry to keep going.
No
You're
problem.
introducing another config option in 1103. Let me give you the link directly to that though.
Let's see. Oh, yes. I remember seeing this option. This is being used here, right? HSS false basic. Um, I don't remember exactly why it was added. I'm not sure if I don't think it was me that added this. Uh, Let me try to remember. It's being used here, like the timeout, start timeout. Yep. Yep, that's a good point. I really don't remember why this was added. I
Yeah.
don't know if someone in the call, I don't know if Kaique is in the call, Kaique or Felipe, not yet. So maybe one of them would know why this was added. Uh, but I can take a note and try to. I don't know what's your question regarding this. Do you have something specific related, or do you just wanted to know what this is for?
Sorry, was muted. No, yes. So since you're planning to backport all of these, I would like to keep the number of config options and things like that to absolute minimum. So if it's not required, why have it sorts?
Okay.
Yeah, but if it is required, I'd like to know if, is that because of REST requires this new behavior now? You're supposed to set the timeout, or you're supposed to wait for a while. I don't know. So if it is required, I'd like to know, and I'd like it called out also in the release notes. Sorts, because every time you make a backport like this, right? And this one's a huge one. I bet it's going to be, and this is going to be mostly Carlos that'll have to do this. We'd have to explain at least when we're doing this upstream that this is going to be a stable backport. Sorry, it follows the stable backport policy, which means that we're not introducing brand new features. We're just strengthening or fixing bugs and things. And this is what this giant thing is for us. This is fixing a giant issue and regression that might happen because OpenStack releases don't correspond with ONTAP releases and so on. And so at some point, end users might end up suffering because the ONTAP API is gone and stuff like that. So that makes for a perfect explanation. But as we are doing that, somebody is going to look at this code and go like, okay, you're introducing net new behavior as well. So unless that behavior is absolutely required, I would like to avoid it. That way it makes it easy. But if it is required, we would just add as to why it's required, and if it only affects you if you enable something, and it's not going to be it's going to be perfectly backwards compatible and stuff like that. So that sort of thing is fine. So just as you're thinking about it, convince yourself, and then let us know. That's what that would be.
I got your point. I take some notes here, and I will check if it's mandatory to have this configuration. I believe it's required. Otherwise, we would not have added. But I agree with you. It's better if you can avoid to have this to make the backport easier to do. Okay. Anything else? Another question?
Nothing from my end. Thanks for taking me through this, though. I wouldn't have done this on my own. Figured all of that stuff out. So at least, and thanks for walking us through those known issues. Could you put this Etherpad link, and I can do that for you. Forget it. So I wanted this on the review focus Etherpad so that we don't lose the link after this call.
Right now.
Great, thank you. Awesome. On my end, the only thing I think is I'll take a look at this, and I might have more questions, and I can ask definitely. And we should do that, right? We should everything we're discussing on this call. We should put it back on the review. So I'll do that. So I might ask you the same questions which you have already answered, but I'm going to add them back to the review. So if somebody else is looking and has the same question, they have the answer. And please do follow up on, I guess, on the first batch. That would be nice to get it past CI. And
yes.
Yeah, so if we have to do another call, we can chat on OFDC and figure out when we can do that.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Do you have anything else, Carlos?
Oh yeah, thanks for taking us through this. I did take a look at the first change, like the base one last cycle. The structure looks pretty good. And I had only a few comments, but I don't think it's far away to be merged, to be completely honest. Yeah, so it is a lot of code to review. We all know that it's close to like 10,000 lines of code. But and for that, like as you imagine, and as we already spoken, we know you took some actions. Is CI results and testing is pretty much important for this. So thanks for running CI on this and for posting some results there. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have a plan for upstream CI on testing this? Because you have like the REST operations and the like ZAPI operations, and I think at some point we might want to have like the REST operations voting on upstream CI as well, but we also want to cover like the ZAPI ones. So what I don't know, what are you do you have already a plan of what to do with the CI?
As far as I remember, we plan to add the CI for REST to be triggered automatically, like ZAPI one and the upstream jobs. Right now, what we have is the manual trigger in the downstream patches. So that's what we did here. We triggered the jobs. I don't know like a date, when we are going to do that. Probably not until feature freeze, but we are planning to do that in the future. I think it's the idea is to have both REST and ZAPI jobs running on the upstream CI as well. And in the future, only REST as soon as we deprecate ZAPI, maybe. But I think that's it. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was only curious about that because I mean, if you embed like the both tests in on job, then it would become like twice the amount of it will become like twice the amount of time that the job would take to run. So I don't know if that would be ideal for you specifically, but yeah, thanks. I think that sounds like a good plan.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is I hope that the ZAPI job doesn't go away soon. And the reason is because, you can theoretically expect people not moving to this immediately, maybe not in the near future. So they'll need advance notification. And so while that thing happens, we just keep running the tests, so nothing breaks.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I understand that puts an enormous amount of stress on you guys to maintain a CI and to do double the testing and stuff like that. But I guess the way to go about it would be just probably communicate to the mailing list, etc., saying we're not going to test this, and that would actually help you move people to the new stuff that is well tested, and then eventually you can do your deprecation and things like that.
Sure. Okay. I believe that's all. Anything else?
No, not from my side. I think you covered the questions, and yeah, I got them already. Asked some things that were interesting, also some things that I was thinking about too. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks
Great.
a lot, Naeem.
Okay, thank you. If you need an extra session, we can talk on IRC or mail. Just let us know.
Sure thing. Yep.
That's it. Thank you, everybody. I will stop the recording.